Incredible. Now then, last year Dom Littlewood investigated a law firm accusing people of unlawful file sharing on the internet, things like music and films.
And 8 months later, Dom's been back to find out how the company had its knuckles wrapped in court.
Max Morris, a church elder and classical music buff from Aberdeen, who, like thousands of others, was accused of unlawfully sharing copyrighted material online. Max supposedly uploaded this track. Max insists he's innocent. Our investigation last year found many like him who said they too had been wrongly accused by the same firm, solicitors ACS Law. Letters from ACS Law said unless they paid hundreds of pounds, they could face court. Some of those singled out by ACS Law were suspected of sharing music, but for others, it was a lot more serious because they stood accused of downloading pornography. It caused enormous distress to Paul Johnston Knight and his wife Sarah. She received 3 letters from ACS Law as their internet account was in her name. It's alleged their client had evidence leading it to believe unlawful file sharing had taken place of pornographic material. But they denied it and refused to pay.
I was horrified. I was scared. And wondered how on earth they'd got this information. We did have to ask the question of each other in the first place, whether, in fact, had he done it? Had I done it? And when we get to question that kind of trust between two people, that's hard.
And if we didn't pay up, then they could be dragging us through the courts, they could be really tarnishing our family and our names. It probably in legal terms it wasn't blackmail or accusation, however that's certainly how it felt.
The man behind the letters is Andrew Crosley, sole principal of ACS Law, acting on behalf of his clients. They targeted thousands of people whose IP address, that's the digital fingerprint linked to your broadband account, was on a list of those who'd shared files. But experts say this doesn't prove guilt because IP addresses can be faked or any insecure connection hacked into. And the software the firm relied on to gather evidence has been called into question too. Despite ACS Law sending out more than 20,000 letters, the firm were in no hurry to take any of the cases to trial. And no wonder, because when it came to examining the evidence in court, their tough talk was more like empty threats, and the judge wasn't satisfied there was proof of wrongdoing in any of the cases. It's the first time a court had an opportunity to consider the merits of the case. Judge Colin Burse said ACS Law and their clients have a very real interest in avoiding public scrutiny. They were making money from a wholesale letter-writing campaign, and if only a fraction paid up, he estimated ACS Law could have collected £1 million last year. Mr Crosley says that's an overstatement. Even though ACS Law has now ceased operating, Andrew Crosley has been referred to the Solicitors' Disciplinary Tribunal, but it has not yet reached any conclusion. Michael Forrester is advising more than 300 people who got letters from ACS Law. He's planning to bring a group action for damages under the Protection from Harassment Act 1997.
People allege they've been alarmed and distressed by receiving these letters and that they're an unacceptable and oppressive course of conduct against them. People who've contacted us and said, we were out of the country at the time, I'm an 80-year-old grandmother, I don't know how to use a computer, it's just here for the grandchildren at weekends, things like that. But they tell ACS Law this and they're continually badgered as if they'd said nothing at all.
Mr Crosley says any claim of harassment is absurd. He was simply writing letters on behalf of his clients. In essence, what any litigation lawyer does. As for the Johnston Knights, Mr Crosley says his initial letter merely pointed out their internet connection had been used to commit an infringement and invited a response. They say they want letters like these outlawed.
When I actually found out it was a real genuine solicitor based in London somewhere, and that actually they could do this by law, it felt
wrong.
It turned my stomach.
People who file share unlawfully should be held to account. But in the meantime, if you think you've been wrongly accused, you are innocent until proven guilty.
Well, Dom, we've been in touch with Andrew Crosley since then, so what's he had to say about the court case?
Well, in addition to what he told us in the film there, he's actually given us a quote, and I'll tell you, it says, He had planned to pursue these cases further, but now that wouldn't be happening as his client had ceased trading and he'd stopped doing this kind of work. Great.
So, for anybody out there who might have received one of these letters, what advice would you give them, Dom?
Well, there is some good news out there because Which, the consumer organisation, have told us that it's very unlikely that there'll be any more notification from ACS Law they're going to be pursuing these cases. And in addition to that, because of the recent court ruling, they've also said it's unlikely that any new law firms will be taking up this type of work. So good news all round, really.
Yeah.
However, there's some bad news because anybody who's paid the fines, very unlikely you're going to get your money back.
Yeah. Now, of course, unlawful file sharing affects lots of people like Michael here. So how damaging is it on the music industry?
It's huge.
Yeah.
BPI, they're the organisation that represent the recorded music industry in the UK, say there are about 7 million people unlawfully file sharing, and that's costing the industry about £200 million a year. So we're not talking peanuts here, it's big bucks. Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about it, Michael? How do you feel about music being shared on the internet?
Well, it's about distribution. We're in the 21st century. Things change dramatically. The music industry obviously has taken a huge hit, and the film industry is next. I think we have to look at the tools that are available technologically and decide what each of us as consumers and as people think is morally and ethically right.
Yeah.
And Dom, for anyone that's joining a group action in relation to that film, what should they consider?
Things with group actions, you've got to look at the costs. Now, in the case there that we saw in the film, that was a no-win, no-fee situation, but anybody who's joined these groups have got to look at that and establish, first of all, is there going to be costs at the end of it, whether I win or lose? So just make sure, do your homework, basically, first of all. Make sure you're not left with a big bill.
Right.
Good advice, as always. Thank you, Dom.
Yeah,
Thank you.